Have you ever watered your plants and just felt like something wasn't quite right? You feel like you're doing everything correctly, but they still look unhappy. Well, don't be too quick to blame yourself. The truth is, watering is much more than just pouring water from a can. It's actually an art form, and even experienced gardeners make mistakes. Today, we're going to reveal 8 fatal watering mistakes, one for each popular vegetable. Prepare to be surprised, because many of these common errors seem completely harmless. Watering is the absolute foundation of life for any plant, but paradoxically, it's also the most common reason they don't survive. Too much water, too little, watering at the wrong time or in the wrong way. Any of these can put your harvest at risk. It might seem like watering is intuitive. Just pour water when the soil looks dry, right? But what if I told you that's not always the best approach? Our real goal isn't just to get the soil wet. It's to create the perfect environment for each plant's unique root system. All right, let's start with our beloved, but sometimes oh so fussy tomatoes. You've probably noticed this. Sometimes the fruits crack right on the vine, or a black spot appears on the tips. That's blossom end rot. And the main culprit behind these problems? Inconsistent watering. Imagine a tomato is like a small, very sensitive child. It needs stability. If you water it rarely but very heavily, and then forget about it for a long time, the roots get really stressed. The soil goes from bone dry to suddenly soaking wet. The same thing happens if you water frequently, but only lightly on the surface. The roots stay in the top layer and don't develop deeply, and that's when the problems start. Fruit cracking, for instance. You've had a long dry spell, then you water your tomato generously. It gulps up the moisture and the fruit starts swelling rapidly. The skin just can't keep up with the growth and splits. It's like inflating a balloon too quickly. It just can't handle the pressure. Now, blossom end rot is another issue tied to water. A lot of people think it's a calcium deficiency. And yes, calcium is needed. But more often than not, the problem isn't a lack of calcium in the soil, but that the plant simply can't absorb it. Uneven watering disrupts the delivery of calcium to the fruits. The tip of the fruit just doesn't get the nutrients it needs and starts to rot. So, for tomatoes, stability and moderation in watering are key. They appreciate predictability, like true perfectionists. Next up in our garden spotlight, the juicy cucumbers. You'd think watering them would be incredibly simple, right? Just pour the water and that's it. But this is where one of the most common and damaging mistakes happens. Watering the leaves directly, particularly when it's sunny. Perhaps you've noticed small spots appearing on your cucumber leaves after watering during the day. There's a definite reason for that. Imagine each water drop on a leaf acts like a tiny magnifying lens. Sunlight passing through that drop gets focused intensely onto the leaf surface. And the result? It essentially burns the leaf. You end up with actual sunburns that weaken the plant. It's just like leaving a magnifying glass on paper under the sun. But that's not even the worst part. The second, far more serious problem associated with wet leaves is how they create the perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases. Cucumbers absolutely love humidity, but definitely not on their leaves. Moisture that lingers on the leaf surfaces, especially during cool nights, becomes an ideal spot for various fungi to take hold and thrive. Think about powdery mildew. That's the distinctive white flour-like coating that appears on cucumber leaves. If the leaves are constantly wet, especially combined with poor ventilation, the risk of powdery mildew developing skyrockets. This fungus multiplies very quickly, significantly weakens the plant, and can ultimately destroy your entire harvest. So remember the golden rule for cucumbers. Always water strictly at the base, right around the roots. And if you absolutely must water in the morning, do it early enough so the leaves have plenty of time to dry completely before the hot sun hits. Let's talk about the queen of root vegetables, the humble carrot. You might think growing carrots is simple. Just pop a seed in the ground and let nature do its thing. But even this seemingly easygoing crop has a critical watering pitfall that can ruin your entire harvest. The culprit? Inconsistent watering. especially crucial after the seeds have sprouted and the roots begin to form. Imagine a young carrot root just starting to push its way down into the soil. It needs consistent, moderate moisture to grow straight and smooth. If you let the soil dry out significantly and then suddenly flood it, the plant experiences a real shock. That tiny root, which started to firm up in the dry conditions, suddenly gets drenched. In an attempt to quickly absorb all that water, it starts to split and branch out, forming those unsightly forked roots instead of a single, uniform taproot. It's a bit like trying to sculpt something out of clay that keeps changing consistency. One minute it's too dry, the next it's soaking wet. The final result is going to be far from perfect. These forked carrots aren't just visually unappealing, they're also a pain to clean, and sometimes they can end up more fibrous and less flavourful. The most critical period for your carrots is the first month after they sprout. This is when the shape of the developing root is determined. If soil moisture fluctuates wildly during this time, you're practically guaranteed some unpleasant surprises. So, for those picture-perfect carrots that look good and taste great, ensure they have consistent, even moisture throughout their growth. Consider using drip irrigation or simply check the soil moisture more frequently to avoid those sudden swings. Next up, we have crunchy lettuce. Many people see it as the epitome of easy gardening. Just sow the seeds, water from above, and you're done. But there's a common pitfall here: frequent watering from above, especially when it's hot. This is the very trap that can lead to disappointment. A common myth about lettuce is that it loves lots of water and you can just pour it directly onto the leaves, but that's not always the case. When you water lettuce from above in the heat of the day, the wet leaves, just like with cucumbers, can actually get sunburnt. But there's a bigger problem. The main issue is that it can trigger bolting. What is bolting? Bolting is when your lettuce, instead of forming a lush rosette of juicy leaves, decides it's time to flower and produce seeds. This happens when the plant is stressed, usually from temperature swings, excessive heat, and, yes, incorrect watering. Frequent shallow watering in hot conditions combined with the soil getting too hot sends a signal to the plant. Quick! Time to reproduce before things get worse. And as soon as lettuce starts bolting, its leaves turn bitter and tough. The delicious taste is lost, and instead of tender, crunchy lettuce, all you get is an unpleasant bitterness. It's really disappointing, because all your care and effort go to waste. To avoid this, water your lettuce generously, but directly at the base, near the roots. Aim to water early in the morning or late in the evening, when the sun isn't as strong. This helps keep the soil consistently moist around the roots and prevents the leaves from getting overheated. That way, your lettuce will stay tender, juicy, and completely free of that bitter taste. Now let's talk about sweet peppers, everyone's favourite. Many gardeners find their pepper plants struggle, wilt, or even die completely. And one of the biggest, most fatal mistakes when it comes to watering them is overdoing it, especially combined with poor drainage. Peppers absolutely cannot stand wet feet. Imagine pepper roots. They need more than just water. They need oxygen to breathe. If the soil is constantly waterlogged, especially if water sits in the pot or garden bed due to poor drainage, the spaces between soil particles fill up with water. Oxygen levels become critically low. The roots literally start to suffocate, and even worse, begin to rot. Even if the plant looks like it needs water from the top because the leaves are drooping, this could actually be a sign of lack of oxygen, not just lack of moisture. This is what's called false wilting. Thinking it needs more water, you pour on even more, only worsening the situation and leading the plant towards certain death. Signs of this overwatering can be subtle. Leaves turn yellow, drop off, and the plant looks stunted or unhealthy. It's really frustrating because you're trying your best, but the result is the opposite of what you hoped for. To avoid this tragedy, always check the soil moisture before watering. Just stick your finger a couple of inches into the soil. If it feels dry, water. If it feels moist, wait. For peppers, it's much better to underwater than to overwater. Make sure your containers or garden beds have good drainage so excess water can easily drain away. Peppers love moist soil, but not a swamp. Let their roots breathe, and they will reward you with a bountiful harvest. Now let's talk about the star of the garden, the potato. It might seem like such an easygoing crop. Just plant it in the ground and wait for the harvest. But even here, there's a critical mistake that can significantly reduce your yield or result in poor quality potatoes. That mistake is a lack of water, especially during the crucial period of tuber formation. Many people think potatoes don't need much watering, assuming their roots will go deep into the soil and find moisture. And there's some truth to that. Potatoes are relatively drought tolerant. However, there's a crucial phase, the budding and flowering stage, followed by the beginning of tuber development. This is the very moment when potatoes need water like they need air. Imagine your plant is actively growing foliage and flowering, while underground, the future tubers, the potential jewels of your harvest, are starting to form. If the soil is too dry during this period, the tubers won't be able to develop fully. They'll grow small, misshapen, and often deformed. Instead of harvesting large, smooth potatoes, you'll end up with a bunch of tiny peas and uglies. Furthermore, a lack of moisture during this time can trigger the development of an unpleasant disease called scab. Scab appears as rough, brown spots on the tubers, ruining their appearance and affecting their taste. And it all happens simply because there wasn't enough water. Therefore, it's absolutely essential to monitor soil moisture during the period when your potatoes are flowering and beginning to form tubers. If the weather is dry, make sure to provide them with plenty of water. It's better to water less often but very deeply, so the moisture reaches the root system where the tubers are forming. One good, deep watering a week in hot weather is far more effective than daily shallow sprinkling. Give your potatoes water when they need it most, and they will reward you with a generous harvest. Now let's talk about a real kitchen staple, the onion. Every gardener dreams of growing large, juicy bulbs, but often you get lush, green tops while the bulbs end up small and disappointing. The reason often lies in one of the most common watering mistakes, stopping too early. Many gardeners believe that as soon as onion tops start yellowing and falling over, it's time to stop watering completely. The logic is understandable. It's thought to signal that the bulb is mature and needs to dry out for better storage. And there's some truth to that. But there's a crucial nuance that's often overlooked. Imagine this. The onion bulb is actively forming underground. It's building layers, storing nutrients. If you abruptly stop watering when the tops are just starting to yellow, the bulb interprets this as an urgent signal to finish up. It stops growing, even though it could still be gaining mass and getting bigger. Essentially, you're robbing it of the chance to reach its full potential size and become truly juicy. Of course, watering for too long isn't good either. It can lead to bulbs rotting and reduce storage life. But completely stopping watering well before harvest is also detrimental. So, what's the correct approach? You should stop watering gradually, about 2 to 3 weeks before your anticipated harvest, when most of the tops have already yellowed and fallen over. This gradual reduction in moisture helps the bulb gain strength and properly prepare for storage. Don't rush to cut off the water support, and your onions will reward you with large, firm bulbs that will store beautifully all winter. This is a real hidden threat to your harvest. Last but not least, we have our beloved cabbage. Juicy and crunchy, it's often the pride of the garden. But even this favourite has a common watering mistake that can literally ruin your harvest. The main culprit: inconsistent watering, especially sudden shifts in moisture levels. Imagine a head of cabbage. It grows, forming a dense, firm head layer by layer. This process needs consistency. If you let your cabbage go through a dry spell and then suddenly soak it with lots of water, you're setting the stage for disaster. The head, stressed by the lack of water, suddenly starts absorbing moisture rapidly and in huge amounts. The inner leaves quickly swell with water and begin to grow vigorously. But here's the problem. The outer, already formed leaves aren't as elastic and simply can't keep up with the explosive growth of the inner layers. They just can't stretch that fast. And the result? The head simply cracks open. You go out to your garden and find your beautiful, nearly mature head split right in half or falling apart. It's incredibly frustrating and disappointing when all your hard work goes to waste. The cracks can range from small, almost invisible lines to deep splits that make the head useless for storage or eating. By the way, this issue isn't limited to just white cabbage. It applies to cauliflower, broccoli, and even Brussels sprouts. They all dislike these sudden ups and downs in moisture. To avoid this disappointing outcome, ensure your cabbage gets regular and consistent watering, especially as the heads are forming. The goal is consistently moist soil. Avoid letting it dry out completely and then flooding it. It's much better to water smaller amounts more frequently than to give it one big soak after a dry spell. Using mulch is also a great help. It keeps the soil moisture levels more stable and reduces those drastic fluctuations. This way, your cabbage harvest will stay intact, ready for pickling, coleslaw, whatever you like. So we've seen that even the most common vegetables require a specific approach when it comes to watering. The irony is that our well-intentioned care, whether through overwatering or underwatering, can often be their undoing. Remember, the key to success is observing and understanding the needs of each individual plant. The biggest mistake you can make is neglecting the unique needs of each vegetable. There simply are no universal watering rules. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. We hope your plants will be much happier now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and of course, share your experiences in the comments below. Let us know which of these mistakes surprised you the most and which one have you encountered yourself.